A childhood memory. Advent was the season I could hardly remember, actually, but it was that time preceding Christmas that never ended. It'd be interesting to take a poll of some of the children if they feel the same way. That period preceding Christmas never ended. Christmas just felt like it would never arrive. School would never get over with, and the break would come. And then, of course, Christmas seemed all about, admittedly, me facing all the nicely wrapped gifts that Mom had, undoubtedly Mom and not Dad, had wrapped and put under the Christmas tree. The unwrapping of the gifts felt pretty amazing in the moment, but as I look back on those childhood years, admittedly and eventually the excitement wore off pretty quick. As I've gotten older, my mind and heart have gone to the place where I really wanted something deeper, something that lasts beyond Christmas Day. I suspect that we all have been there, or perhaps a lot of people are still there, in that place where they're caught up in, now perhaps it's the shopping and decorating and celebrating, and wanting something more, that our heart is longing for something more. It's not to say that these things are bad, not at all. But in and of themselves, there's a limitation built into them. These things are wonderful, but they can leave us asking, is this it? Is this what Christmas is really all about? Or is this the end game or the goal? Now, why can we often sense this question? Maybe I haven't put it in those terms, but there's an unsettledness or just that longing for something more and something deeper. To repeat, it's not to diminish the importance of gift giving, but rather to acknowledge, to put into words, that all of these things are limited by their very nature. They can only, in effect, take us so far, and we desire to go farther, to go deeper than material things can take us. We're made for so much more. St. Augustine put it this way over 1600 years ago. You probably have heard this, and if you haven't, it's worthy of reflection. This was after his conversion, so he's looking back on this profound conversion that he had. He was a very worldly guy. He had everything the world had to offer. He was extremely intelligent, kind of like a professor. He had money. He was living with a woman. He had a child. He basically had what the world would consider all the elements, all the boxes of success. And yet Augustine was unsettled. Not because he didn't love this woman, wasn't that. There was something deeper in him. And so he put it in these words: you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and we shall always be restless until we rest in you. It sounded like we have this internal homing beacon that until we pay attention to it and then act on it, we're always going to be kind of just unsettled. There's something there that's longing and crying out for more. Blaise Pascal, philosopher of a couple centuries ago, coined it this way. He said, we all have a God hole, and if God is the only one who can fill the hole. God has made us this way so that something in us never forgets that we're made for something higher, something deeper than the material world can offer us. The consequences of not paying attention to this and acting on it: how many children and adults still struggle with jealousy or envy because of what other people have or get? Not everyone put up their hands. But I know after sitting 37 years in the box, a lot of people struggle with this. Children and adults. At times I've struggled with it. We're all caught in some way in this trap. We long for something that doesn't fade, that does not disappear, for something eternal. It's so easy to be drawn into the pursuit of the material very quickly. This is evidenced because shortly after we throw away the Christmas wrapping, the turkeys, if you have turkey, the turkey's barely cold in the fridge, and the tsunami of ads are coming at us to get us out of our homes, perhaps away from our families, unless you want to drag them along with you into the stores for St. Stephen's Day, which everybody in the world calls Boxing Day. But it's actually St. Stephen's Day. It's the day of the first martyr for Christ. It's the day, or at least it's the day when the church celebrates the first martyrdom. It's not the first martyr for Christ, but and so and this whole sort of stream of advertising basically has us on the lookout for the next thing to sort of re-enter a frenetic pace. And if we're not sort of in the stores, then perhaps we're at our computers clicking ourselves into exhaustion. Isaiah's prophecy speaks to this longing of our hearts for something more, pointing to the true gift of Christmas, to make room for Christ. Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 to 7, proclaims the coming of the one promised by God, the Prince of Peace, who shines light into our darkness. Isaiah chapter 2 invites us to walk in the light of the Lord, to make room for God in our lives. We make space for the Christmas trees, however big or small, in our homes. We make space in our wallets, as it were, to buy gifts for each other. This is all good. But this day calls us to make room for Christ in our hearts. This night calls us to ask, have I made space in my life, in my heart, for the one thing or the person who will never fade, who will not have to be taken down, who will bring a fullness to my life? Have I made room in my heart for Christ? Christmas isn't just about the day Jesus was born. It's about how his birth changes everything, offering us peace, hope, and salvation. And I'm avoiding going into a 3-hour sermon because of how this actually leads into our whole hope of life beyond the grave, which many of us might take for granted. Many people perhaps do not any longer believe in. But you have to point to Christ for that, our belief in life after life. His birth changes everything, offering us peace, hope, and salvation. It's so much more than just being positive, which is good, but limited. Christmas is about reminding us that from all eternity, before the angels came into existence or the physical universe billions of years ago, was sparked into a long process, brought into existence, that we have been, each one of us, each and every single one of us, has been intentionally, personally loved by God. So much so that he did not settle on sending an envoy or a representative or an angel to remind us of this. He came himself. St. John, in his letter, his gospel says, he came unto his own, and his own did not receive him. Nobody really factored in that God himself, the creator of the universe, would do this, could do this. That he was the unknowable one. God says, no, I want to be known. Just, I cannot be reduced to you or to the level that you always want to try and reduce me to. God actually came himself. And talk about a personal intervention. There is a challenge, though, and the challenge is to get the most out of Christmas, we have to prepare to make room in our hearts for Christ, to receive him. Like the people of Isaiah's time, we are called to turn away from distraction and welcome the Prince of Peace. And remember, his peace is not just basically a big hug fest, that this peace is actually achieved by war, that he is actually here to fight a battle for us, and the battle is against the Prince of Darkness, who actually has no chance. Jesus Christ is God, but the devil doesn't know this until Christ dies on the cross. The Christ is here for, the stakes couldn't be higher. So much does God value each and every single person that he is actually willing to put himself all the way on the cross for this, to shed every ounce of blood in his body. How can you make this Christmas about making room in your heart for Jesus? Here is one simple way. There's many, but I'll just mention one simple way, but it's actually a very dynamic way, and that is prayer. Prayer. Spend time in prayer, talking to Jesus, and thanking him for coming into the world for you, individually. Many people would say perhaps to this, well, I don't know how to pray. It's not unusual to hear this, but the answer to this is kind of like when I spoke to somebody who's a coach, like a professional coach, not a sports coach, like a business coach, and I'm trying to come up with a personal plan, growth plan. So if you anything know about business, you know what a growth plan is. So I'm having difficulty doing this, and he said, just do it. Just do it. It's better to do it badly than never do it at all, and if you do it and keep working at it, it will get better. Okie dokie. But that's what I have to try and do. So I'm taking that advice and I'm saying, just pray. It's like, I'll kick you out of the nest, just pray. And if you pray badly, it's better than not praying at all. But if you pray and you keep praying, it will get better. It's like talking, because prayer is essentially conversation with God. You know, what do I say in prayer? The good, the bad, and the ugly. All of it. You just talk to God. I mean, there's more to it than what I'm saying, but that's basically the framework of prayer. It's not that complicated. And you know, the fact that Jesus wants us to do this, he intentionally inserted words into the Our Father, give us this day our daily bread. He could have said this month, could have said this year, could have said this quarter. He said this day. Why? Because God the Father wants his children coming to him every day. What father shouldn't like talking to their children every day? God the Father wants his children talking to him every day. He's interested in us. So it's better to do it badly than never to do it at all. And you will get better if you stick with it. That's the key. You got to stick with it. Just try to picture in your mind if each of us really tried to make room in our heart for Christ, spending time with him all the day, spending time with him every single day, what it would look like. Christmas would not be just a day, it would actually become a lived reality that transforms our lives and communities. The peace and joy of Christ would shine through us, reaching beyond December the 25th. Takeaway this week. Really try to be intentional about making room in your heart for Christ. And it's not just believing in him. The devils know that he exists. So believing in him is not like, no, there's got to be something more. It's entering into conversation with him and coming to an awareness that he's the only one who can satisfy the deepest longings in my heart. That's when prayer will never stop. When a person is willing to sacrifice themselves for a little time each day until that kind of thing happens. So set aside 10 minutes of your schedule every day. So small investments, deposits every day lead to compound interest in your spiritual lives, just as they do in your financial lives, even more so in our spiritual lives. Start with this, one thing, but do it every day, 7 days a week, 365 a year. Let this Christmas be different. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It's not a huge thing, and it's within our grasp. Let this Christmas be different in the best of ways. If you do, then you will be different. And maybe you can, with God's help, make a difference, even a little, in other people's lives. And I think we all want to make a good difference in other people's lives. So let us start the start of something, let this be the start of something lasting, making room in our hearts for Jesus Christ.